Hello, my name is Ryan Davis, and today we will be discussing Chapter 5, A Mandate for Reform, from the book Academically Adrift. This presentation was made possible through collaboration with Bethany Butterfield. As we all know, the cost of higher education is ever increasing. However, for a large proportion of students, gains in critical thinking, complex reasoning, and written communication skills are exceedingly small or empirically non-existent. In a study performed by the authors of this text, it was found that 45% of students did not demonstrate any statistical significant improvement in CLA, or Collegiate Learning Assessment, during their first 2 years at the college. We also see that students will enroll in classes that do not require substantial reading or writing assignments. These classes usually contain very little, if not any, instructor interaction, and students define their college experience from more of a social standpoint rather than an academic one. We also see significant differences in critical thinking, complex reasoning, and communication skills across different family backgrounds, racial groups, and socioeconomic status. These inabilities were seen to persist throughout the college years, with gaps between African American students and white students increasing with respect to unequal demonstrated abilities. Also, students may demonstrate the ability to graduate but lack the development of high-order cognitive skills that college-level graduates need to possess. The idea of limited learning in the U.S. can be traced back throughout history. The impression that students will inherit the business of their families has now changed to relying on individual achievements through occupational success, requiring both academic credentials and academic skills. Post-World War II, the U.S. led the world in percentage of young people that graduated from college, sometimes by a large margin. However, in the early 1990s, the importance of a college-educated workforce became clear as global economy implications were discovered. During the 1990s, the U.S. ranked last in increasing participation ranks, with no marked increase throughout the decade. And as you can see in this slide, it demonstrates a timeline of what we just discussed. And you can also see the U.S.'s issues came quickly after other nations realized how important college education was, and the U.S. did not make a shift of their own. With all that we just talked about, it might be easy to say that there is a crisis in higher education. There are a few reasons why the crisis word may be overstating what's happening. First, the survival of the system is not being threatened in any significant ways. Also, though parents may complain about increasing costs, the desire for a safe environment where their children can mature, gain independence, and attain credentials is still being satisfied. Students still want to balance the social experience as well as academic ventures. Professors are still actively pursuing professional and scholarship interests. Administrators still focus on external institutional rankings and the financial bottom line. And government agencies are still pushing for new scientific knowledge. So what's all this mean? It means the system still works. But before we dive into what changes can be made, it's important to look at the students before they enter a higher education system. Their participation is highly important through the strength and intensity of the secondary school's curriculum. Not only does it have the largest impact on bachelor completion, it also has an impact on college entrance. Students also need a moral grounding that anchors their ambitions in the tasks, behaviors, and practices required to achieve the ends as they view meaningful. Students also need to develop a self-maintained love for learning that will continue throughout their lifetime. So how do we fix this? The authors propose 4 areas that require examination, including higher education leadership, improving curriculum and instruction, facilitating learning, not just persistence, and lastly, institutional transparency and accountability. Starting off with higher education leadership, a culture of learning needs to be created. This needs to come from the leadership at the institution. A quote from the text states that student success becomes an institutional priority when leaders make it so, and I think that really resonates. This needs to be a shared vision between leadership and community members. Leadership should also focus on bringing back the community sense within the institution. Although individual purpose and meaning are important, the communal college identity is often lost. With respect to improving curriculum and instruction, academically rigorous instruction has been shown to improve high-order thinking skills, time spent studying, faculty with high expectations, courses with reasonable amounts of reading and writing are associated with students' learning. The 5 clusters listed are based on a national survey of student engagement, or the NSSE. Facilitation of student learning through course objectives, supplying examples, clearly presenting material, linking content to objectives, applying what they are learning, performing knowledge publicly, engagement and assessment and adjustment of teaching are also important. Continue on this subject, active and collaborative learning need to be researched more in order to discover whether increased student engagement and time on task are occurring. Also, the instructor's education needs have to be have an element of teaching skills within their curriculum, not just traditional doctoral education that can be heavily research focused. And as you can see, our course does that. Facilitating learning, much can be related to academic activities, more so in the active learning to promote individual growth. Focus must also shift from the modern social aspect of college to one of increased intelligence. With regard to persistence, this comes from satisfaction and attachment to institution and peers. Learning takes the focus on intellectual life. We see that more modern college paradigms have interest in things like updated dorms and fitness centers, as well as athletic arenas. However, it seems like student outcomes have gone to the wayside. The authors have proposed an externally based accountability system. An advantage to this is that data on students is more transparent, but there's also a disadvantage being that the lack of significant effectiveness is still out there. We've seen that internal assessments on performance are increasing through the institutions, but governments at either the state or federal level would have a hard time implementing an accountability system in higher education due to the likelihood of resistance of the imposed systems from the higher education system, as well as their underdeveloped measurement and understanding of the learning process within the higher education system. This brings about a proposed better option of using grants to enhance learning. So in summary, college education, as we know today, is not producing the high-order thinking and reasoning skills necessary for specialized workforce. The college graduates are entering into the job market at routine non-manual occupations, whereas graduate students are getting into more specialized jobs. So we are currently academically adrift. However, change can occur. As Kennedy reminded us, to choose paths of purpose, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because the goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and I hope you have a wonderful day.